What do you think the Underground Railroad is? If you're thinking of a train which runs underground, then you're wrong. The Underground Railroad is a network of people, routes, and safe houses which helped runaway slaves escape to free states or as far north as Canada. To understand the Underground Railroad, let's take a look at slavery and abolition.
Israel was an Egypt land. Let my people go.
In 1619, slavery, or the state of being under the control of another person, started in the United States. 100 Africans were shipped to Jamestown, but only 20 survived the trip. Those who survived started to serve in the British colony of Virginia. That was the beginning of America's thriving slave trade. Most slaves lived in the South and many worked in agriculture. With cotton making many plantation owners wealthy, they believed slavery was an economic necessity for them. We teach them they are slaves until the white face belongs control and the black obedience. Plantation owner, 1820. With slaves getting beat daily and submitted to long, hard work, it was no wonder every slave's dream was to escape to freedom.
Made him understand to let my people go.
People who helped slaves escape to freedom and who were against slavery were called abolitionists. Some of the most important abolitionists were Northern free blacks because they organized the first anti-slavery societies. Those groups formed the first truly integrated social movement, which helped blacks to escape to freedom. As a group, they fought for political change, and by themselves, they turned their houses into safe houses in which they harbored and took care of escaped slaves until they could move on. Abolitionists took great risks because harboring slaves was illegal at the time. William Lloyd Garrison was from Massachusetts and a devout abolitionist. He published the newspaper The Liberator and gave speeches. At one of Garrison's conventions, a member of the audience by the name of Frederick Douglass stood up and delivered a great speech about his life as a slave. The speech was never written down. All we have to imagine how great his speech was is Garrison's recollection. I shall never forget his first speech at the convention. In physical proportion and stature, commanding in intellect, richly endowed in eloquence, a prodigy, and yet a slave, a fugitive slave, trembling for his safety, hardly daring to believe that on American soil a single white person would befriend him. A powerful impression he created. The applause which followed excited my emotions, and I think I never hated slavery so intensely as at that moment. William Lloyd Garrison, 1841. In 1850, around 3,000 people worked to help slaves escape. As the system grew, it was named the Underground Railroad. Underground meaning secretive, and railroad meaning the moving of escaped slaves. Other railroad terms were used such as station, depot, and conductor. Secret signs on trees, lanterns in windows, and hidden messages in songs helped slaves to find their way. One well-known slave song to pass on messages was the Drinking Gourd.
Another name for the drinking gourd was the Big Dipper. Follow the drinking gourd meant to travel at night while keeping the Big Dipper and the North Star in sight. The dead trees will show you the way refers to dead trees along the Tombigbee River. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on refers to charcoal or mud drawn on trees to help escaped slaves find their way to freedom.
Oh, freedom.
One of the famous conductors of the Underground Railroad was Harriet Tubman. She was called the Moses of her people, because of her valiant trips to the South to rescue other slaves.
She went to the South about 19 times. Often she boasted that she never lost a passenger, which was true. Plantation owners offered $40,000 for her capture, the largest bounty ever for an escaped slave. She was never captured and died at age 93.
And I go home to my Lord and be free.
Over the years, approximately 100,000 slaves were brought to freedom. Some even went to a small town by the name of Freetown, right here in East Hampton.
Freedom over me, and before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave, and I go home to my Lord and be free, yes, I'll be free.
No more darkness.
Darkness,
No more darkness.
no darkness,
No more darkness
over me, and before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave, and I go home to my Lord and be free, yes, be